We still have some leaks under here, and we want to fix all those leaks. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the tranny pan off and drain all the fluid. Then we're going to change the transmission filter and clean that all up, put a drain plug in there and reassemble everything, and then we're going to do the same thing for the old pan. We'll take that off, reseal it, and give it an oil change and start fresh. Really all we're going to need for this job is we're just going to get a bucket here, drain our fluids in. This is the new gasket for the Magnum engine here, and then we've got a filter and gasket kit for the transmission. So before we get started here, some people suggest if you want to warm up the vehicle, just get it up to operating temperature, warm up that oil. When it drains, get as much of it out as you can. You just got to be careful now because, I mean, the exhaust is going to be hot, and that oil will be hot too when you pull the plug. So just be prepared for that. We drain the oil out of the front there. We're going to let that exhaust cool down before we attempt changing that oil pan. So got all the oil drained out of that. Now we're working on the tranny pan. These are the bolts off the tranny pan here. Just using that impact laying on the ground there. Got our container ready to catch the fluid. And so what we'll do is we're going to remove all of our bolts on this back side here. And we've left these other bolts over here. We're just going to loosen those. So then when we break this side free, it'll tip down, and then it'll start to spill the fluid into the container here. We got this pan out. We're going to clean it all up, and what we're going to do is we're going to find the lowest point of the pan to put our plug in. So what I've done in the past is I just used one of these. This is a previous one that I had bought a couple years ago, and I just want to demonstrate how you can see the face of that and the quality of the fitting here. And I went back to the same store. So this is probably a 1/4 by 3/8 reducer, and so this is just another one. It's just an old one that I took with me to the store to try and find the right size. Strangely enough, they don't have the right size. This is the only size that they had, but I just want you to see, like, this is what we're left with nowadays. And this is our a reputable store in town, and this is the quality of the product that they've got here. Like, this is pretty lousy, and like look at how rough that is on the faces here. This is where your wrench goes on to tighten that in. So what I did was, because this is all rough cast, what I did was I trued up the face on this, and this is, look, there's a gouge here, and this, look at that surface there. Pretty poor, but I guess this is what we are left with nowadays. So to true up the surface, what you can do is you can put a piece of sandpaper on a metal plate, nice flat surface, and you throw that on there and rub it around until you get a nice trued up surface. So this is, I think it was stamped on the other one. 1/2 by 1/4 is this one. It'll work for what we want. So trued up the surface there. The next thing to do is just get this is a 1/2 inch tap fine thread, and you're going to work that in there all the way through, because these threads actually start off as 1/2 inch, but they're pipe threads. So you work that all the way through to the bottom, and now you're going to have the hole that will accept the factory plug. Now, whether or not you have a factory plug is inconsequential, because technically all you really need to do is get yourself a 1/2 inch bolt with a fine thread on there, and cut it to however long you want it to be, and then put that on there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that lowest point in the pan. I'm going to use a center punch and mark it, and I'll drill a pilot hole, and once I've got the pilot hole in there, I'm just going to use the step drill until we get to the right outside diameter to fit that in. And what we want is basically we're going to just want, I could actually even cut this down a little bit with the grinder, but what we want is just the top face of this to the bottom of the pan, because you want it to be able to drain. So then we'll weld it on the outside only when we put that in there. And then what we'll do to protect our face that we we got all trued up there. We're just going to put a washer in there, and then we're going to use a bolt, and we're going to put the bolt in, snug that down tight to the washer. That's going to protect our face so it doesn't get any welding splatter on it. This will also act as a heat sink too, because when we're welding that onto the pan with the thin metal there, this will act as a heat sink and absorb all that heat. And then when we're done, we'll just finish it all off. And like I say, you can either get yourself a factory plug, a plug with a magnet, or just a 1/2-inch bolt fine thread. Any one of those will work. And now you have a plug in your pan, so you can drain the oil out before you drop the pan. Finished welding that bung in the bottom of the pan here. Here's what it looks like after it's all welded in. And so again, what we did was we just had a washer and a 1/2-inch fine thread bolt. Put that washer on there, put the bolt in, put that all the way down to protect the face so it doesn't get any welding splatter on it or anything like that. I found one of these factory plugs. This seemed to be the one that was in the best shape. I'll throw that in there, and it's got the factory kind of like a plastic kind of washer there to help seal. So we just we drilled the hole, and then we screwed in our fitting, and then we just welded on the outside here. On the inside, we wanted it flush with the bottom so that you get your draining action. And then we just kind of ground around here any loose paint or any loose metal or whatever, get rid of all of that, so that's not going to be an issue. Just have to remember to put our magnet back in here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some silicone all around the pan, and then I'll set this gasket on. I've got this clean cardboard, and I'll flip it upside down so that we'll let that tack up, leave that for a little bit. Once that's all done, we're ready to put it on. I've got all my bolts cleaned up over here, and we'll put that on, make sure we got the surfaces clean on the transmission itself. 5/16 bolts on this should be about 17 foot-pounds when you torque that down. And then we got to replace our filter here. So here's two different styles. This is the one that came out of the Jeep, and this is the one that came in our kit for the Grand Cherokee. The difference is this one's a little thicker, right? It's got that same filter inside there, but it's got this housing that goes around it. The other difference is this just has 2 holes there, and the one that we took off has the 3. So if we use this one, will just be 1 extra bolt that doesn't get put in there. I don't believe that's any consequence at all, and the pan should be deep enough. We won't have any issues, and that is the part that I ordered for this vehicle. So either or, whichever one you choose to do, if you can, and I don't know if there's a difference in cost between these two, but this was the one that came out of it, and that's the one that came with the kit that I bought to replace it with.